Tornere marina, este linaki soledad. Tona lora tovla, alina. Esta surano taki, les renoirs, tonare fuego verso, alina, ai.
Looking back through many of my past projects, I've noticed a pattern. I always seem to start with some sort of hook that loosely sums up the entire video in its own compact story. So when I thought about how to start this video, I was honestly at a loss. I just couldn't think of anything. The best idea that I came up with was a montage of gameplay, and it has some of the soundtrack in the background. Now, to be fair, with my 2003 AMV coded brain, this is going to happen. I'll fit it in somewhere. But for the intro, I couldn't come up with anything. I feel like it says a lot when I'm the one that's left wordless. It says even more that the best idea I came up with was just to play the climax from the prologue. I think this scene mirrors the themes of the game the best. I don't think I could possibly do better. Now, all this to say, it's been a long time since I've been so utterly captured by any singular piece of media. If there was anything that could put me in this sort of chokehold, though, it's definitely this game. It's safe to say that Expedition 33 has become... It is an obsession for me, and for good reason that I'm sure hundreds of other people could explain better than I could. This is a game where my negative comments can be summed up to as sometimes I've encountered audio or gameplay bugs. There may be a few other minor things that I think that they could have done differently, but I feel dirty even making any suggestions about those. Claire Obscure has only been out for about a month now, but I think that this is the kind of game that's going to totally end up shifting the industry. I'm already seeing it be brought up in conversations time and time again in regards to both quality and price of modern day releases. However, only time will tell us if this is the kind of game that will popularize or create a new genre, such as Super Metroid did with Metroidvanias, or Dark Souls did with Souls-likes. Now what I really want to do is talk about just how much intent and thought go into crafting not every boss in the game, but two in particular. Honestly, I really just want to talk about one specific boss, but I think that it would be doing a disservice by going on some sort of schizophrenic tirade about my favorite boss for 10 minutes without having anything to compare it to, so I'm going to try to keep it together long enough to sprinkle in a couple examples in order to set the stage properly.
Another axon. How did it get so large?
She wasn't always this tall. She's obsessed with reaching the stars, so...
Papa and his parables.
Parables?
He never paints just to paint. Everything has to have layers and layers of meaning and purpose. Everything's a lesson.
I think it's pretty obvious that Renoir's not the only one who enjoys parables. Nothing in this game is really placed without thought or reason. From things like a character's abilities to their personality, to where the bosses are placed, to foreshadowing, or even how the bosses are designed themselves. Everything was done with intent and meaning. Nothing is there solely to pad out the time. I mean, seriously.
For those who come after. For those who come after. Right?
Death is not necessarily final.
What does that mean?
Gustav lives on in other ways, right? Through your memories, through his influence on your life and everyone else's, through the Lumina converter and his research.
Everything I knew about our world is wrong. And you know what? I don't care. 'Cause death isn't death anymore.
Remember how you said Versa was too perfect? What mother wouldn't paint her perfect son?
White hair. Who are you?
Alicia.
I remember asking myself why Alicia seemed to have this power to stop time. It seemed to make even less sense to me when we find out that she's just a copy created by Eileen. Even though she's immortal, you'd think that if anybody, she would have one of the weaker abilities in her family. And while it's never outright stated why she can stop time, Eileen just painted the truest version of her daughter, whether subconsciously or not. Her ability is symbolic to Eileen's feelings towards the real Alicia. Her time stopped that day that Verso died, and it's not exactly subtle that she blames Alicia for his death.
Yes, I understand. It's her fault, and she doesn't even know it, but you can't be here.
The painted Alicia can stop time in this world because that's what the real Alicia did for Eileen. With Verso's death, Eileen was figuratively trapped in a single moment in time, unable to move forward. However, after entering the painting, it becomes just about as literal as you can get, because there's clearly a vast difference in how time moves between the painted world and the real world.
They've spent longer than this in other canvases. It's not that dire.
67 years. 67 years I spent trapped within the monolith.
I personally love this kind of layered character storytelling. It's a way to reinforce Eileen's mental state rather than telling us over and over again about how she feels. We get to see the different ways that blaming Alicia physically manifests in this world. Now, at the risk of a poor transition, I want to move on to the bosses.
For those who come after.
Oddly enough, I think that the Lamp Master is actually one of their best designed encounters. Not solely because of the looks or how the boss itself is designed, or even how it's essentially the end to Act 1, but with how it fits so thematically within the story. I believe that the Lamp Master affects the design of every location that we've been to up to this point, and in a way, at least the first area of Act 2. It's fitting that the boss that directly leads to Gustav's death resembles the creatures on the beach. It's almost like his story comes full circle at the end, as he's left behind and just silently overlooks the water. The fact that the boss's weapons of choice are lamps is pretty ironic for a couple of reasons. First off, until this point, every location that we've been to has had its main path laid with lanterns. We're led to believe that they're guiding lights left by expeditioners who came long before us. But what if it was the Lamp Master himself? The only locations that really don't have lamps are the Gestural Village and Eskier's Nest, both inhabited by the strange and strong alike. So could the lamps be placed to imitate the path that other expeditioners left behind? Sort of like some sort of freakier anglerfish. Second, the expeditioner's official motto is "for those who come after," which you could equate to a saying like passing along the torch. In Gustav's case, Verso's the one who comes after. He takes Gustav's place in the expedition, and Gustav figuratively passes the torch along, with things like Verso's perfection being similar to Gustav's overcharge mechanic, or the plethora of skills that they have in common with one another. Lastly, my favorite is how through the entire journey in the Lost Battlefield, while en route to Gustav's final resting place, there isn't a single lamp that lights the way, only torches. For me, I think that the Paintress as a whole is one of the most beautifully executed encounters I have ever had the pleasure to play through. She's the final hurdle before the mask drops, and nearly all of the questions that we've had for the entire game up to this point are answered. The lead up to the top of the monolith gives us hint after hint towards the truth. After being unable to harm her creation, we come face to face with the Paintress herself. Now, what does she do when faced with the people who are unknowingly trying to destroy the world that has the last sliver of her son's soul in it? She lashes out in her pain and anger. She does the worst possible thing that she could, inflict the exact same pain that took her son from her. When the painted Verso ends up intervening, Eileen is forced to watch a twisted reenactment of her son's final moments. This time it's her fault. She's the cause of it. And rather than confronting the reality in front of her, she does exactly what she did the last time. She runs away. Instead of escaping into the canvas, it's to the top of the monolith. So we follow her to our final confrontation. I just love the abundance of nonverbal storytelling. By the way, in case you missed that giant hole in her chest,
I want rage to consume me. Anything to fill the hollow. For a few moments a day, my heart beats again.
with Lumiere at the Paintress's back, we see our home. The reason that we're here fighting in the first place. This moment is why we've gone on this incredibly long journey. This is why Gustav had to die. This is why we started the expeditions. In different ways, we all just want this to be over with, but the Paintress is in our way. She's in between us and home, our final roadblock that ends our journey. That giant hole perfectly positioned to give us one final reminder of why we're here. With the Paintress's back to Lumiere, right where her heart's missing, is that broken tower, a symbol that represents this broken world just as it does Eileen's family. It's a reminder of home for us. It's a reminder of what we've lost and what we stand to lose. However, the Paintress isn't actually a roadblock, at least not in the way that we think she is. Eileen is standing in between you and what you're about to unknowingly destroy. She's protecting a copy of the home where her family once lived happily. The home that she wishes she could one day return to. The home that she stares at longingly, hoping that maybe somehow the pieces of that tower, just like her life, will one day be returned to how it used to be, even though it can't. Every aspect of this is a physical representation of how Eileen feels after Verso's death. She talks about how it feels as if her heart doesn't beat anymore. That's because when she escaped into the canvas after his death, it was ripped out of her. That gaping hole in her chest is clearly visible for any of us to see. Even her creation, the axon that she summons, is a hole so deep you can see all the way through to Lumiere, to where Eileen truly believes her heart is, to Lumiere that she once raised her happy family in. But now, all that's there is a fractured tower representative of her broken heart. It's interesting how she says that for a few seconds a day, it feels like her heart beats again. We don't know the exact time dilation between the painted and real worlds, but the only time that we see the paintress with any physical representation of a heart is with Lumiere to her back, and I can only think of one other time she would be positioned as such. So maybe her heart's not beating again because of the canvas that's slowly killing her, but because with every year that passes, she's forced a little bit closer to being pushed out and needing to confront her grief. It's amazing just how much the dev team, whether intentional or not, was able to pack into what equates to only a few minutes of time for us. This fight both echoes the struggle between Eileen and Renoir and the final battle that's yet to come. This is a battle where son and daughter, one unknowingly, clash with their mother at the very top of the canvas. A battle that mirrors the ideal between husband and wife, one that reverberates through to the end of the world, where the final struggle between the living ghost of the paintress's daughter and the shadow of a man's son that's long dead takes place.
Rest now. Things will be better soon.
Hold on to each other.
Verso!
I'm sorry.
This story was never about Renoir, who can only hide his grief for the sake of his family. It's also not about Eileen, who grieved so profusely that it resulted in the fracturing of this very world. They're major players, sure, but ever since the beginning, this was a story about their children, because of one pivotal decision.
You're okay.
This is a story about the grief and regret that one sibling feels. But if you think that Expedition 33 is just a story about grief, then you're certainly half right. It may not be clear, but the ending perfectly showcases the other half too. Alicia and Verso, in an extension of their parents' 67-year-long feud, face one another at the end of the world. Both siblings with their backs to what they fight for, facing what they fight against. Alicia, just like her mother, with her back to Lumiere, wishes to avoid her grief at the cost of herself. And Verso, just like his father, for the sake of the living, wishes for his family to part with the dead. I find that Clear Obscure's themes of sacrifice are often overlooked. Just how far are you willing to go for those you care about? Would you damn yourself and the world for the few people you care about most? Renoir, Gustave, both of the Versos, even the Expeditioners, they all sacrifice so that those that they care about will be able to live on.
When one falls. When one falls. Not if. When. We knew not all of us would make it, but we continue. As long as even one of us stands, our fight is not over.
The ending is not just the culmination of confronting one's reality or deciding to live in the comforts of a lie. It's about those that in their grief would do anything at the end of the day just to see the shadows of their loved ones again. And about those loved ones who would give anything to protect the people closest to them. If you side with Verso and choose to destroy the canvas, you face Alicia. Behind her is everything that she fights to protect, everything that you have been fighting to protect. Both the world that she spent 16 years in and her friends are at her back. However, this time, unlike at the top of the monolith, unlike with their mother, Lumiere is not just home. Instead of being a reminder of what you're trying to protect, as Verso, you are staring down everything that you are about to destroy. And behind him is what he's been fighting so long and hard for, the end of his canvas. This is a game where you traverse and see firsthand the consequences of their parents' inability to lean on one another, their inability to properly grieve, the inability to listen to reason or deal with each other's heartfelt anguish. You see the consequences of the mistakes that Eileen and Renoir make. It's almost poetic that their children follow suit, because this is not our story. We don't get to pick our happy ending. Verso and Alicia have made their decisions. They're repeating the same mistakes that their parents made before them. Even if it truly was our story, sometimes life keeps forcing cruel choices. In a broken world, you don't get to make the right choice where everybody ends up happy. You only get to choose between two mistakes. So the question is, just which mistake are you going to choose at the end?
Old friend, you've traveled miles, spinning in circles, your blind eyes on the dial, stripping
I'm sorry.
out colors. But it's time to say goodbye until next life.
I think that someone with any semblance of intelligence would have chosen to end with that last section if they were in my position. But seeing as how I'm not just somebody, I'm going to continue on for just a little bit longer, but this time about my favorite boss. So this was actually a pretty tough decision. When I first started this video, now going on almost 3 months, I fully intended this section to be about the duelist. However, after being held hostage for nearly 2 weeks by a certain endgame super boss that I decided to skip until New Game Plus, I'm pretty sure Simon squeaked out some sort of first place tie, but that might just be the Stockholm Syndrome talking. Seeing as how I currently have more to say about the duelist, I'm going to continue on talking about him for just a little bit longer. Now, I said at the beginning of this video that my complaints can be summed up as sometimes I've encountered audio bugs or gameplay bugs, and that would be absolutely true, starting with Act 2. During my first playthrough, and only my first playthrough, throughout Expedition 33's first act, I became increasingly irritated because of the inclusion of the Gestrels. For the entirety of the prologue, throughout most of Flying Waters, the tone of the game can be described as somber yet hopeful. However, there's a very abrupt tonal shift upon entering the ancient sanctuary, and that tone is only reinforced when we arrive at the Gestrel village for the first time, and again throughout Esquia's Nest. The Gestrels are funny little guys, but after everything I'd been through for the past 5 or 6 hours, I thought that this was supposed to be some sort of more serious story. It's like any tension that was built up throughout the prologue totally evaporated. We've been told that we're participating in what's essentially a guaranteed suicide mission, and all of a sudden we're fucking around with little paintbrush golems. Like, don't get me wrong, everything else was still amazing, but I couldn't help feel disappointed at this sudden turn in direction. Yet this was absolutely the right decision, because not everything was fine, I was simply being gaslit into thinking so. If you had asked me during my first 4 or 5 hours of gameplay what I thought about the tone of the game, I would have described it as tonal whiplash. And that would normally be a bad thing, except that developers of the game clearly wanted to evoke these feelings, because Expedition 33 leverages its abrupt change in tone absolutely to its advantage.
Get out of my way!
Yo, what the fuck? You run my boy Gustav through, then show me a tooltip for him? Why not just fucking slap me across the face? Oh, jeez, fuck, man. Throughout the second half of Act 1, I had been lulled into a false sense of security, and completely forgot what the actual stakes were because of the Gestrels. Everything that happened in Lumiere felt so distant and completely out of mind. I didn't think that anything bad could happen. But that's when Act 1 ends. I felt like I had been playing with a jack-in-the-box that exploded on the final crank. I actually ended up stopping soon after and went to bed a good 4 or 5 hours before I normally would have, because I felt just so emotionally drained. I even convinced myself that Gustav would gain immortality after hearing about Verso and Renoir, and yet that night, I still found myself mourning for a character that I was positive would be back in just a couple of hours. I've been so perfectly primed. I was in the same mental position that Maëlle was. I completely understood why she was chewing everybody out on the bridge. She was trying to process what happened to Gustav, and everybody else just wanted to push forward. Maëlle's upset because she felt like she was the only one who cared, even though we know that's obviously not true. And that's when it happens. I don't even know where to start when it comes to this amount of effort. The metaphors, the nonverbal storytelling. 1 minute Maëlle's surrounded by people that she cares about. Things are starting to look up a little bit because everybody's beginning to come to an understanding with one another. Then just like Gustav's death, everything comes crashing down all at the same time. At her lowest point, Maëlle wakes up in a place that time is seemingly long abandoned. The corpses of fellow long-dead expeditioners are strewn about in every fucking direction. This is a place that you would normally only see if you're about to join those expeditioners. This is the moment that I realized that there's no going back. Everything's changed. Gustav, Maëlle, nobody in our group is any better than the thousands of corpses laying about down here. This is our reminder that the world does not care. Up to this point, I've been talking about the Gestrels, and the more lighthearted tonal shift that came along with them. Any lesser game would have placed the Gestrels after Gustav's death to help soften the blow. The entire point of the Duelist is that you can't return to the happy, cheery tones of the Gestrels. You've seen too much. The Duelist is proof of the Double Down, and it's confirmation of exactly where this story is headed. It marks a return to the same cruel reality that we were met with at the beginning of the game. which is certainly not towards those silly little paintbrush guys. Any time where we get even a glimpse of that again is short-lived and quickly forgotten about. The Duelist is not the greatest boss narratively in the game, nor mechanically, or even its design. Arguably, you could say it's music, but there's a lot of strong contenders for that. Anyway, to me, the Duelist represents the commitment to just what kind of story they wanted to tell with Clear Obscure. I'm really glad that they told this one.
Could never tell if you were my brother or my father. But to me, you were both. Best brother and father I've ever had.
Masks are not just to obscure, they may also illuminate.
When one falls, we continue.
I'll finish what you started. The Paintress and Noir, they will pay.
Your sister deserves more. Aline, look at Alicia, she can't be here. Aline, it's supposed to be you and me, not you against me.
Go home, Renoir. Go paint something else.
She'll never paint again.
Why am I the only one who sees this? I treat you as if the shadow from the worst day of our lives is going to suffocate you and take you from us too!
Stop him from painting. I don't want this life.